student plus teachers plus parents equals success. And I can expand on that teacher equation, the entire student or the entire community at a school. And just remembering that it really, truly takes a village, and everybody needs to be involved in order to ensure our student success. And if you can be a part of that, then go for it. Our future will thank you.
Welcome to the Sapience Podcast, the podcast that explores inspiring stories and contributions from influential members of our community. My name is Sam, and I'm joined by Estefania Wolak. With over 8 years of experience in the field, Estefania currently holds several key roles, including President of Enliven Ed, Director of Operations at Autonomy Architecture, and Student Success Strategy Director at the Sapience. Her career highlights include serving as an assistant principal at Coral Academy here in Las Vegas, and where she establishes common values, provided professional development to teachers, and collaborated on school operations. Estefania's educational background includes a master's in education from the American College of Education and a bachelor's of science in elementary education from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. With her unwavering dedication to advocating for education, her commitment to positively impacting her community, and impressive educational leadership skills, welcome Estefania Wolak.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I know I just gave a brief introduction of your many accomplishments, but would you like to share a little bit more about yourself and your experiences with education?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, all the things in there, I'm from Las Vegas. I actually was born in San Diego, though, but moved here when I was 5 years old. So pretty much a native of Las Vegas, first born American. All my family's from Mexico, and that's why I have my name, Estefania. So a little difficult to say, I apologize. So, thank you. I appreciate it. I moved here when I was 5, and I'm a product of the Clark County School District, and just always had a real love for learning. The teachers were my safe space. They were my people. That's really where I felt at home was teaching or was learning. So it's kind of a natural progression for me to go into teaching. Although it wasn't my first choice, I will say. I tried architecture first, which is a funny parallel with what we'll talk about with autonomy architecture. But I did start in architecture, and I just was rooted back to education. Mm-hmm. So like you mentioned, went to UNLV, and through that time, I got to be a substitute teacher. I just really dove in once I switched to education. So substitute teacher, certified trained tutor, and then just made the progression to be an elementary education teacher. Started in kindergarten, which was a good experience. But just working for CCSD, through substitute teaching and being in my own classroom, I got to meet so many people and have so many different experiences. I got to go to a lot of different schools. Substitute teaching is definitely a lot different than regular classroom teaching. But even then, even though I wasn't really in the school community, you could tell the routines that the teachers had set up. So I tried to take away those little snippets down to how the classroom ran and how it was decorated. I remember just taking pictures on my phone of the cute classrooms and what I would want. I like that. I don't like what I want to implement it. And you can tell, tell when you have a positive classroom community. Absolutely. And that really helped me through my education and ultimately establishing my own classroom. I was lucky to have a really, really great student teaching experience. Her name is Rachel Lewandowski. She's still a teacher, and I just learned so much from her, just how to establish a really positive classroom. And then fast forward, into like I said, in my own classroom experience, I have some of my best friends still that I go on girls' trips with, that I talk to. So I built a lot of relationships in the Clark County School District. But I did get to a point where I wanted to do something else and, detach from the district. We have a really large district here. And I just wanted to experience something of a more small community. So I had a couple of endeavors in between, and then got hired on as a literacy specialist for Coral Academy, which was a great opportunity for me. It really was an honor to get to work with them. Mm-hmm. I worked with them through the pandemic. So that came with its challenges. And included in that was funding. I was in a grant position, so I did have to go back into the classroom for a little bit, did some online teaching and all of that experience. And it's really crazy how we just kind of dove in, made it happen for our students. But it was a good time, and it really taught us a lot of different skills, and the kids a lot of skills that we didn't think that we would get to learn. Yeah, I mean, no one anticipated something like that would happen. It was a surprise, right? Awful surprise, but it was. And then I got to go back into literacy specialist once everything settled back down. We got that funding back. And then Coral was actually expanding when I was in my literacy specialist role. They just recently opened a larger campus. And when that happens, staff leaves, moves. Our principal went and opened the new school. Some teachers left. And we got a great new principal. My last principal was also great, but we got a great new one as well, which, there's always that anticipation.
Oh, yeah.
So I got to know her. She got to know me. Being a literacy specialist, you're more on the administrator side, so you're working side by side. And at that school, we had one principal. Everyone's structured a little bit differently, but we had one principal, two assistant principals. One of the assistant principals was leaving, and she kind of just came up to me and asked if I would want to the role, and ended up doing that for the last couple of years that I was at Coral Academy. And then from there, took a break, start my family. So I'm about a year from the school building, and then got to get involved with the most two recent endeavors, three, I guess, that you mentioned, which was starting my own company, working with my husband. Actually owns our Autonomy Architecture, so we'll get into so we'll talk about that a little bit, I'm sure, and then coming back to the Sapience, which actually I worked with a while ago as a tutor. So circling
full circle.
everything full circle. It's really, really amazing.
Could you expand on a few of those experiences that you were talking about, Enliven Ed and also your husband's architecture company? I'd like to know a little bit more about those.
Sure. So Enliven Ed is really my jump back into education. I want to, we live in such a time where it is possible to, be with our family and also grow a business. So that was my idea behind it, and, wanting to get back into education in a different way. I came up with the name because I was looking for something that meant, growth or bringing, and it literally means to bring the spirit back into something, which is something that I feel that education needs that push every once in a while, often, it's cyclical. So I'd like to be a part of that push. And that, uplifting spirit to anyone pursuing in education. So it's very new. It's more on a consulting basis, but that's my vision for it, is to take what I have learned and experienced and really try to empower people and enliven education in lots of different ways. And then with Autonomy Architecture, that's my husband's entrepreneurial endeavor that he embarked on 2 years ago now. So he's really great. He also graduated from UNLV, started his own business a couple of years ago. And he also we're very much about the words, right? The words and what they mean. So autonomy to him is people empowering themselves, with buildings. And we talk about all the time, just the structures around you and, invoking any sort of being inspired by your surroundings, which is also important in an education building. So the conversations that we have together, it's been an interesting dynamic to go from working with hundreds of people in one building to being home with my husband and having those conversations. And everyone tells us oh gosh, that's hard working with your partner, but it's really not if you have a
good partner.
We have a good partner. He pushes me, work together well, and it's really taught me the entrepreneurial side of things, right? I go through and I take care of our finances and all the communication, most of the communications with clients and things like that. And that will help me running my own business, even though they're not quite the same as far as industries go. There's some overlapping. If you're thinking about just people as a whole and what it means with our surroundings and relationships with people, it all like you said, full circle, meshes together.
It really does. And I think that's really cool that you still actively work with your husband, because, good teammates in marriage doesn't always mean good teammates in work. But when it does, it works. And I'm glad that you have that experience, because I think it's really cool that you guys build each other up, use those experiences.
Absolutely.
I want to talk a little bit more about what motivated you to pursue a career in educational leadership.
Sure. To be completely transparent, I never thought I would do it. I always thought I was going to be a teacher, teach kindergarten and first grade, and that was all that I was going to do. But as I mentioned before, I was just able to build such a good community and network with the teachers that I worked with, and they just really empowered me. I mean, even going to my literacy specialist position, I had one teammate that I worked with in second grade, and she kind of had already taken that route and was working as an assistant principal. And I just spoke to her and she was like, you know your stuff, you can do it.
Yeah.
She was a big advocate for me and just going for it. So that was kind of my first step into leadership. Like I said, a literacy specialist is kind of an in-between role. Really, my educational leadership was the assistant principal role. And that was kind of the same. I don't want to say that I don't go for things, but I'm definitely cautious in the steps that I take and the decisions that I make. So when we got our new principal and, talking to her and then talking to the assistant principal that was already in that role, they were really pushing for me. And I feel like sometimes you need to hear it from other people that you can do it and that they want you to be a part of the team. And I said, why wouldn't I be a part of this, group of women that are going to lead this school with a lot of new teachers? Because as I mentioned, Coral was opening a new campus. So that meant we were going to hire teachers, we were going to build our team. And it was just a great opportunity. Yeah. Another thing that was unique in working with Coral is that they provided tuition reimbursement. So they told me, you don't have, I know. And I said, well, I don't have my master's yet. Like, how am I going to do that? Yeah. And they said, well, you can get your degree in conjunction. We'll help pay for a portion of it. Wow. And I was able to get the experience and get the knowledge and just, it was a great experience, really.
Very cool. Very cool. I think that's really valuable when a workplace contributes to their employees' education. And it sounds like throughout your experience, maybe a little bit, at first, maybe you were dealing with a little bit of some imposter syndrome.
100%.
You were like, but clearly you're well-educated, intelligent, and belong there. So I think that's something a lot of listeners can resonate with, is just not feeling necessarily like you belong. And so I think that experience is really valuable to share.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So you have extensive experience in education, including roles such as assistant principal and literacy specialist. Can you share some of the highlights and challenges of these positions?
Absolutely. So the great thing about both of those is that you just get to interact with so many people, and I really thrive on that. So I got to be in a literacy specialist position, got to work with a lot of kids. Not that I didn't like my little classroom family and things like that, but one thing that they say going from the classroom teacher to a leadership role is that you get to impact more students than just your immediate classroom. Yeah. And I always thought that so cliche. They're, just, a little, like really, something everyone says. Yeah. It was so true. Fortunately, I was able to work with a lot of different students across all different grade levels as a literacy specialist. And then I also got to be a support for teachers, which was a relief for them. And I know that relief myself. You want a small group and know that certain kids have certain needs that need to be in a small group instruction. Right. I was able to provide that for them. I was able to collect data that they didn't have time to collect for. Obviously, I couldn't provide for everybody, but I felt that I was able to meet the needs of a lot of my teachers and a lot of my students. So that was the really great part about being a literacy specialist. Being an assistant principal, same. I was worried and that it would just be discipline, like kids walking to my office and things like that. But it was exactly. But it really wasn't that. It was just getting, and obviously a lot of rules are what you make of it yourself, right? So I still wanted to make sure that I was connecting with as many kids as possible, that I wasn't just the scary assistant principal that you went to if you got in trouble. I made it a point. We had a fairly small school, K7. I say small, but it was still like 650 kids. Yeah. Compared to the other schools that I worked at, 1,000 plus. Yeah. And I just made it a point to try to learn as many students' names as possible. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. I did that in my classroom as well, but hundreds of kids, and they would even tell me, like, Miss Wolak, all the kids' names in the school. So I wanted to make that connection, and that was really my highlight, was making the connections with all of the kids in the school and the teachers as well. Actually, like you mentioned, the imposter syndrome, which was so true, working with teachers, especially very seasoned teachers. Do I know what I know? Yeah, exactly. But I got such positive feedback from people that have been working in the industry for a really long time as far as, my leadership and things like that it was really, Coral really built me up as far as my experience as an assistant principal.
I love that. And I just want to speak on the fact that how amazing that these women at Coral Academy really did lift you up and help reassure you that you are where you belong and you are such a critical member of that team. And so as a woman myself, I think like those are experiences that are so valuable and
Absolutely.
something that I want to highlight because go us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely.
I think that's awesome. And I love that so much. And I'm really glad that you had such positive experiences doing that and it really contributed to who you are as a person, rounding out, your passions combined with your education. It all aligns. Having talked about some of your professional experiences, I want to talk a little bit more about your educational experiences with Sapience. So how does your role as Student Success Strategy Director here at the Sapience align with your vision for education?
So I really love everything that the Sapience is doing just in general as far as individualized instruction. I think that's really important. And I saw that a lot in my literacy specialist role, just the power of getting to know the students, doing exactly what it is and providing the type of instruction that they specifically need. So that is something that I really believe in that we're doing here at the Sapience, getting to know the students and at different levels too, not just their academics, but also what their interests are personally, because we all know if we're in a positive environment and building that community, we're going to thrive. And that holds well to students, kids at all ages. And then in my role that I'm embarking on here, I'm just aligning everything with my prior experiences, making sure that everything that we're doing is aligning academically, providing the best that we can for our students and making sure that they're thriving in this educational setting as well.
I love that. That kind of ties into my next question. Can you discuss the importance of creating a positive learning environment and how do you achieve this in your work?
Absolutely. It was something that I thrived or that I definitely was my purpose and my goal even in my classroom. Think about what it's like when you're at work, right? If you're in a negative environment, we don't want to be in that sort of situation. So why would we think that our kids are going to be successful in that situation? And, you want to have your expectations, don't get me wrong, because you want to have some rules and have high expectations for your students because students need that structure. They need that routine in order to learn. But you also want to make sure it's a little bit of give and take. You want to make sure that you're establishing those rules, but also making sure that your students know that you're there for them, that any of the questions that they have, you're there to support them. And that's how students thrive. If they know that they're cared about, it really makes the experience for them a lot better. And I have a story back when I taught third grade. That was about my second or third, trying to remember, classroom that I had myself and my first time teaching third grade. And I tried to establish that, right? And third grade is just such a good age because they're really learning about the world. It's such a good age to be teaching. And I really think that I had fostered that positive environment. And I started seeing the kids doing things that I wasn't expecting. Like all of a sudden they had created communities, like within their little clusters of desks that I had, because I always did, group instruction. They were like, oh, well, this right here is our government. This is our fire department. This is our hospital. They created currency. Oh, they had they were doing all kinds of things that actually extended into recess as well, that they were still learning, kind of created this own little cluster and economy. Not to the point that it was distracting anything, but they were doing it very skillfully. And I went to my principal and I said, this is happening in my classroom. What do I do? Should I make it a project? What should I do to build on what they've obviously felt comfortable to create? Yeah. And he said, sometimes you just make a good environment and you just have to let that live. And that, hey, it's hard. I want to build on it and I want to be a part of it. Yeah. I just kind of had to let it live and just had to be a reflection of me. And again, I set my rules on it. I'm like, okay, you guys can do this thing. We'll just make sure that it's not distracting from the whole. And it allowed a community that I had built within my classroom to just kind of build upon itself. Yeah. So it was really great and powerful. So community is definitely big for me as far as that positive impact.
That must have been such a rewarding thing for you to watch. Mm-hmm. I talk about I would want a hand in it and be like, want to blow it up. But how also beautiful that you were able to just sit back and observe really the fruits of your labor, what you put into them, what they're getting out of their educational experience with you. So that is so cool.
Yep. And I was lucky to have a principal there as well, a good leader who was able to guide me through that as well. And also that he had created that where I felt comfortable walking into his office and saying, hey, this is happening, because, not everybody has that sort of leadership relationship and experience. So I was lucky to be able to run that past him. And yeah.
I mean, even though it was a positive thing,
absolutely,
being able to know that you can have that rapport, go get advice, I think is so important. And, we're not all experts. We don't know everything in the world. So relying on our community, especially fellow teachers, fellow administration, that's so important to be able to foster that. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay. As a lifelong learner, what drives your passion for continuous learning and development?
I've touched on it a little bit as far as my mentors and what they were like and, how they helped me develop as an educator. And one thing that all of them had was that they were obviously learning and growing and developing themselves. And that I really took to heart and that really has fostered my love of learning and knowing the importance of continuing to learn, especially if you're teaching others, right? You want to be relevant. You want to be, you want to be relevant. You want to know what's going on. You want to be able to connect with people. And, even the teacher that I mentioned before that I worked with that is now a principal out in Pahrump, she also talked me through the assistant principal transition, and she even gave me books and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about reading books and about my professional practice and what that's going to look like. And it was super impactful. So just making sure that I'm, like I said, just gaining that knowledge for myself is really important to me.
Yeah, I like the idea that education really never stops. And I think it's very interesting that you talk about how your leaders, your mentors were learning themselves. I think we think of mentors or leaders as someone who has this finite knowledge that's it's there, but yes, the people who are still learning are the people we really should be looking to, because they're learning. There's still more to learn. There's still knowledge to be had. So I think that's a really powerful thing for you to say and something I had never considered. So I appreciate that. What are your future goals in both your professional and personal life?
So I'm hoping that they just kind of beautifully intertwine. Right? I had my son May 2023, and that changes your perception of what it looks like. What is education going to look like? What do I want my son's experience to be as far as education goes? So I hope with the new endeavor and for working for companies like the Sapience that I have a good good set of tools of an environment that my son can really learn and thrive in as we're learning and growing. I would love to hopefully someday work for UNLV or some other university. I think as far as teaching, I still want to be able to foster that growth and hopefully be a mentor for people coming up and being in education. And as far as us also kind of overlapping, we read to my son every night, and it's always been a dream to write a children's book. So maybe one day as we're going through, I can see what his interests are and hopefully kind of build off of that and maybe do that one day. So maybe we'll see what I'm able to check off.
Well, I'm sure you. I think, first of all, moms can do anything. Two, our babies motivate us like no other. And I think, like you said, I'm a mom too. I want the best for my kids. And so especially reflecting on the education system, reflecting on what my kids are going into, that is something that is relevant to me now more than ever. Yeah. And so I think being able to contribute to that, you're actively contributing to that by being part of educational programs and schools and places like the Sapience, that's how we do it. Those experiences are what really build those successful interactions for our kids. So I think that's really special. And I definitely think that you will be able to integrate your experiences with, your baby and your personal life. I think those are always the best, most successful stories when that happens. I want to just close out by asking you, what messages would you like to share with our listeners, especially those pursuing careers in education and leadership?
If it's your passion, definitely go for it. We need such passionate people leading our children and teaching our children and making sure that they're, getting the best education possible. I would also say to take control of your learning.
Yeah.
You are in charge of your own learning. It's really easy to get into a classroom and just have that be your place. Teaching is very unique, and you show up for work, you interact a little bit, but really you close the door and you're in your room and you're with your kids for those 9 months, depending on the type of school structure. And it's easy to get in that, but just know that you still have a community of educators. Yeah. And if your principal or anything like that maybe isn't fostering it for you, ask if you can go into that classroom and observe. Ask if you're having some difficulty, with classroom management, say, hey, do you know anybody that is really good at classroom management, and seek out those opportunities to learn from the people and know that you're in a good learning environment. And with that, also seek out those leaders that are going to build you up. There are some that will and there are some that won't, and don't be scared to move around and not jump ship just because it's hard right there. It's really hard for us to retain teachers, especially in this school district. Yeah. But there are so many other options. We're also really blessed to have a lot of different schools and different communities that you can be a part of. So, seek out those communities, seek out those relationships, because that's really going to make you successful. Yeah. As far as leadership goes, be the boss you want to be. Make sure that you're supporting your people. Make sure that you're still getting in tune with what's going on in the classroom. Sit in those classrooms. Yeah. Sometimes we feel that the assistant principals and the principals have been out of the classroom so long that they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what it's like these days. Right. Get in there. If you have a suggestion for your teachers, I'll never forget the very first principal that I have. And I've actually talked about him a little bit, but his name is Chunny Davis, and he's working higher up now in the Clark County School District. But I'll never forget my first year being a kindergarten teacher. Mind you, they're kindergartners. And this is a man who's been a principal for a really long time. And I was reading a story, and he stopped me and he said, hey, can I show you something real quick? And I said, absolutely. He got up in front of my classroom. He showed me a management strategy, and I used that management strategy all through my career. So, if you're going to be in a leadership role, be able to do those, those humbling things. Right. Get up there, don't just tell people, show people. Right. Just like we are with our students in our classrooms, you need to show them how to do something. And why would we treat, the adults that we're leading any differently than we are teaching our students? So just be that leader that you want to be.
I love that. Any other closing remarks or ideas that you have, messages to pass along to listeners, students, parents that might be listening? What do you have to
I will say, when I was going through my student teaching, we always have an open house or anything like that. And the lady who was my student teacher mentor, which I mentioned before, she put up on the board, student plus teachers plus parents equals success. And I can expand on that teacher equation, the entire student or the entire community at a school. And just remembering that it really, truly takes a village, and everybody needs to be involved in order to ensure our students' success. And if you can be a part of that, then go for it. Our future will thank you. Only investing in our future if we're taking care of our students and our families.
That is so beautiful. Thank you so much. I want to, again, thank our wonderful guest, Miss Estefania. I want to ask if people do want to learn more about you or about your experiences, because you're so impressive.
Oh, thank you.
Where can they learn more about you?
So right now, I really only have my LinkedIn that I have active. So I need to work on everything else. I kind of drew back once I had my son. So I
totally understand.
I need to get out there a little bit more, but my LinkedIn, and you can reach me from there too. Send a message or anything like that. And I'd love to connect with anybody and everybody.
Absolutely. We're also going to put your information on thesapience.com so that if any of our listeners do want to reach out, you can do that as well. Thank you again to our wonderful guest, Estefania. It's been a pleasure getting to talk to you about your expertise in student success and your perspective on education. Thank you so much for our listeners for joining us on the Sapience Podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation or want to know more about our guest today, visit our website, again, thesapience.com, or follow us on social media.